They did not abandon the hill. They buried it. Limestone rubble, animal bone, broken tools, shattered images, all of it carried inward until the circles disappeared beneath their own debris. Before that fill went in, the buildings seemed to have been cleared out, perhaps even stripped of roofs if roofs existed. That is the first fact about Göbekli Tepe. One of the oldest monumental places on Earth was put away on purpose, around 8000 BC. Before the burial, the site stood on the highest part of the Jermis Range above the Harran Plain, about 15 kilometers from modern Sanliurfa. The mound is roughly 15 meters high, and much is man-made, built up by repeated labor over centuries. Surveyors noticed it in the 1960s. Peter Benedict identified it as Neolithic, but the site was still read as little more than a stony rise. In 1994, Klaus Schmidt returned after work at Neolithic quarry and saw what others had missed, bedrock glittering with what he called a carpet of flint. Excavation began in 1995, after a local landowner had started smashing exposed pillar heads with a sledgehammer. The popular version prefers one miraculous date, as if a temple simply appeared in 9500 BC. The Archaeology says otherwise. In the Pre-Pottery Neolithic A, from roughly 9600 to 8800 BC, people quarried limestone pillars from the nearby plateau and raised circular enclosures between 10 and 30 meters across. In Enclosure D, the twin central pillars rose about 5.5 meters high and weighed around 10 tons, set on shallow pedestals cut into the bedrock floor. Around them stood more T-pillars carved with foxes, boars, snakes, cranes, ducks, and vultures. Some pillars wore belts and loincloths. They had arms and hands. These were human forms reduced to stone geometry. Then the story kept moving. Radiocarbon dates place Enclosure D early, around 9745 to 9314 calBC. Enclosure C follows. Enclosure A is later still. What the public turns into one impossible moment was really a long sequence of building, remodeling, reuse, and burial. Some decorated pillars were reset so that carved faces ended up hidden inside walls. The old image of a pure ritual sanctuary now looks too clean. Recent excavation has also found domestic activity, enough to make Gobekli Tepe look less like an isolated temple and more like a settlement with a ceremonial core. That matters because Gobekli Tepe breaks the neat story in which farming comes first and monuments come later. Klaus Schmidt thought ritual gathering may have helped drive wider change. Yet newer scholarship resists a single explanation. The German Archaeological Institute now stresses everyday life on the mound, not ritual alone. A Cambridge study argues enclosures B, C, and D may have been planned together, their centers forming an equilateral triangle. That suggests foresight and shared design rules in place. Even the imagery stays difficult. Excavators note the dangerous animals on the pillars were all local species, perhaps protective rather than fantastic. The human images are more unsettling still. Many were deliberately fragmented, and broken human heads were placed carefully in the fill, often beside pillars. That is the deeper significance of the site. It does not prove that religion invented civilization, and it does not fit the old farming-first script either. It shows communities still living close to hunting, and gathering could already organize labor, quarry megaliths, stage large feasts, and build symbolic architecture on a scale once thought impossible for their time. UNESCO calls Gobekli Tepe one of the earliest examples of human-made monumental architecture. More important is what that monumentality implies. Ritual, domestic life, engineering, memory, and food production may have been tangled together from the start, and the hill was not alone. Neolithic quarry shared the T-pillars and the same stripped-down human form. Other Upper Mesopotamian sites carried related animal imagery on vessels and tools, hinting at a wider social network rather than one isolated wonder. Stonehenge is the lazy comparison, but it comes 6,000 years later and explains nothing. The better comparison is the wider Neolithic frontier, where cultivation, settlement, and shared symbols were all taking shape at once. Gobekli Tepe was not the first neat chapter of civilization. It was the messier draft, written in limestone, then buried by the people who understood it best. If you liked what you watched, please like and subscribe. We post interesting and crazy stories from throughout history every Wednesday and Saturday. Yesterday's craziness? Because yesterday was crazy too.